Hey, what's up, English 11 students? This is Mr. Kais. It's Monday, April 6th, and I'm going to bring to you today a discussion regarding the Tim Johnson scene, which is in chapter 10. Okay, this week we'll be reading chapters 9 through 12, but right here, right in the middle of this book, right in the middle of Harper Lee's book, is the Tim Johnson scene. Now, most critics, most people that read To Kill a Mockingbird, wonder why does Harper Lee put this scene in the middle of a book where Atticus Finch shoots a rabid dog. Okay, you have Atticus Finch, who is just found out he's defending Tom Robinson, who is a black man accused of raping a white woman in the 1930s South. I mean, this is very significant. You have all these things going on, and yet, right in the middle of this book, she puts this scene about a rabid dog. Um, Today's one of those days where I really feel the sadness for not having students in front of me to explain this wonderful scene in this book, because this is to create change. Harper Lee uses symbology. Okay, this is very symbolic, and it's a situation that you, me, and the average Joe can understand, and she knows that. And so instead of just trying to use fancy terms or uh, you know tricky rhetoric, she simply writes in a scene that we can all understand. So this is very important that you understand how important Tim Johnson is. Now let's talk about who Tim Johnson really is. Okay, again, this is in chapter 10. Let's reintroduce our characters really quick. Okay, we have Scout, who is the narrator. We have our brother Jem. We have Calpurnia, who is the housemaid. We have Hecate, who's going to come into play here. He's the sheriff. Okay, Hecate is the sheriff. He's the law. We have, of course, Atticus Finch, who is our social hero here. And last but not least, we have Tim Johnson. Now, Tim Johnson is a rabid dog. Now, why the dog has a first and a last name, I'm not sure. I tend to believe that Harper Lee gave Tim Johnson a first and a last name to make the dog more human, okay, to personify human characteristics, okay. But Tim Johnson is our rabid dog. Now, in the beginning of chapter 10, Harper Lee wants us to understand how the children feel about Atticus Finch, okay? Fact is, she builds kind of a scenario here where Atticus is viewed as feeble. This is in the beginning of chapter 10. Scout says Atticus was feeble. He was nearly 50. And I guess to these two young children, that seems pretty old. She goes on to note he wore glasses. He was nearly blind in his left eye. And this just builds a scenario where we, the reader, believe that Atticus Finch is your typical old guy that really is capable of not much. Maybe defending Tom Robinson, but that's it. Okay. He's feeble, old, nearly blind, nearly 50. Okay. So that's how we start off chapter 10. Then as we move on, we have Scout and Jem. They're out playing in the street, out playing, hanging around the Radley home, and all of a sudden they see Tim Johnson. Okay. And Scout says, "That's old Tim Johnson, ain't it?" Replied, "Yes." Tim Johnson was the property owner of Mr. Harry Johnson. They see Tim as a liver-colored bird dog, the pet of Maycomb. Okay. They really assume a friendly position here. The children don't see the dog as bad or a threat. They just see the dog as a dog, as part of the community. In fact, as he says that, is the pet of Maycomb. Okay. So they assume a friendly position. Now, Calpurnia, on the other hand, she has much more wisdom and experience. She knows danger. She understands danger. She can see that the dog is rabid and it needs to be taken care of. And she says, "This is Cal. I swear to God, there's a mad dog down this street apiece. He's coming this way. Yes, sir. Mr. Finch, I declare he is old Tim Johnson. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes." Okay. Calpurnia, she knows better. She knows that the dog is dangerous. And so she calls Mr. Finch for help. Now, here comes Mr. Finch and Mr. Tate. Heck Tate, the sheriff, and Atticus Finch. Now, one can assume Who's going to take care of the problem? If you, me, everybody in this world were to make a bet, we would say it's going to be Heck Tate. Heck Tate's the sheriff. That's not what's going to happen. Some interesting dialogue here. Jem says he looks more sick than anything. Or excuse me, that's a Scout that says that. Jem says he's looking for a place to die. Now, I add this because earlier I said that the perception of these children is quite pure. Okay, it's quite unique. They didn't see Tim Johnson as a threat. They just say he's looking sick, and Jem says he's looking for a place to die. Heck Tate, though, he's like, no, he's far from dead. He hasn't even got started yet. Now that's going to come back to play in a moment, so just remember that. Okay, but the children have this very unique perception. Okay, and I'm going to bring that up again here because it goes to Harper Lee's motivation to have Scout as her narrator. She could have had anybody. She could have had Atticus Finch be the narrator. She could have had Calpurnia. All these adults that she could have narrate this book, but no, it is Scout, this young child. Okay, let's move on here. Okay, so now we have all the characters here. Heck Tate, Scout, and Atticus are watching the rabid dog go up the street. Calpurnia has the children behind closed doors. And again, I said, and you would believe this, Heck Tate would be the one we would assume would take care of the problem. But as you can see in this text right here, take him, Mr. Finch. Mr. Tate handed the rifle to Atticus. Jem and I nearly fainted. Now, why would Heck Tate hand Atticus the rifle? Atticus is nearly 50. He's old. He's an attorney. He has no legal responsibility to take care of this rabid dog. He's not an elected official. He's not law enforcement. And yet, Harper Lee creates a scenario where she has the sheriff hand Atticus the rifle. Of course, Jem and Scout think Atticus is old and incapable, so they nearly faint. Mr. Tate almost threw the rifle at Atticus. Mr. Tate says, I'd feel mighty comfortable if you did this now. Now, strange, right? This is a strange scene where the sheriff is giving a normal, average guy on the street a rifle and saying, take care of the rabid dog. And what does Atticus do? He takes the rifle. The rifle cracked. Tim Johnson leaped, flopped over, and crumpled on the sidewalk in a brown and white heap. He didn't know what hit him. Atticus Finch, again, our hero, takes the gun and kills the rabid dog. So, let's talk about the meaning behind this story. Let's talk about the point Harper Lee is trying to create here. We have a scenario where children are being threatened, okay? Here's Scout and Jem. They represent innocence and a pure perspective. They see things as they really are. They see the world as it truly is. They're not subjected to cultural stereotypes already. They don't see color. They don't see race. They just see the world as pure as they can. Now, Calpurnia, she's smart. She sees the world as it has treated her. She understands that Tim Johnson is a threat. She understands because she's been around. You have Heck Tate. Heck Tate is incapable and unwilling to create change. And in this scenario, which I'll bring up in a moment, he is society. He is the population, the average American living in Jim Crow South, unwilling to create change. He's incapable of creating change. But who's not incapable of creating change? Atticus Finch. Atticus Finch, a brave man willing to take the gun and shoot Tim Johnson. He's a person capable of creating change. And then Tim Johnson. This is the most important part. Tim Johnson represents racism, prejudice, hate, the cultural standards of a Jim Crow South, a place where segregation is the norm, a place where blacks, whites could not coexist, a place where a man could be hanged in the public square for no other reason than the color of his skin, a place where hate is the norm. Okay? Tim Johnson, the rabid dog. Now, the children, when they initially see Tim Johnson, they don't see that. They just see everybody is loving and helpful. They see Tim Johnson as just a part of the community. They see hate and racism as just that's the way things are. Calpurnia, no. She understands that Tim Johnson, she understands racism, prejudice. She's lived with it her whole life. She's an African American woman. She understands the cultural standards. She can see the danger there. Atticus Finch can see the danger. Even Heck Tate can see the danger, but he can't do anything about it. He can't go arrest a man for beating up a black man. He can't arrest a white man for that. He can't create change. He is incapable of shooting Tim Johnson. He's incapable of eliminating racism and hate and prejudice. Sheriff Heck Tate is incapable of handling the situation. That society. But who is not incapable? Atticus Finch. Atticus Finch, who can take on Tom Robinson's case. Atticus Finch, who knows that small gestures on his part can bring about change. Atticus Finch, who has the ability to take the rifle from Heck Tate's hands and shoot Tim Johnson. He has the ability to remove racism, prejudice, and hate from his community. That is the person who is capable of making change. Now, that's chapter 10 in a nutshell. Okay. It's important to understand that the purpose of chapter 10 was to not only build in a cool story, but to show how Heck Tate was incapable, how the sheriff, society can't actually create change without the help of people like Atticus Finch, without the help of Calpurnia, without the help of others. All told to you from the very innocent perspective of Scout Finch, a child. Now, you'll be able to watch a video on this. I'll create not create a video. I will share with you the video of this scene played when they made a movie of To Kill a Mockingbird, and you can watch this and also read about it in chapter 10. Guys, this is really one of the most important chapters in the book because it shows as the story moves on, as Atticus Finch does his best to defend Tom Robinson, as Atticus Finch does his best to be a social hero and create change. You can see it's not as easy as simply putting down a rabid dog, but he gives his best effort. And that's that. That's chapter 10. I hope you understand this. If you have any questions, please let me know. And good luck in your reading.